A quick word on Meghan. Well, Meghan and Harry, I think, interestingly, have laid off yet more staff. 3 staff have gone from their Archwell Foundation, or I think it's now called Archwell Philanthropies, isn't it? For some reason, they've changed the name of their charity. But they say this is inevitable in a non-profit organisation. Looking back on this year for Meghan, it hasn't been a great year, has it? What's your assessment?
No, it hasn't been a good year for Meghan at all, and she's desperately trying to control the narrative around these staff members going, as they always do. They lose staff members the whole time. They always say it's inevitable, it was expected, it's not because of Meghan's personality, of course, because, you know, they would do that. But the numbers are really stacking up. I don't know where we're into now, in, you know, a dozen or so, or more. And it hasn't been a good year for Meghan, really, because of her series, because she really wanted 2025 to be the year that her own Netflix series, her cookery show, which is all about her, not about Harry, not about slagging off the royal family. She wanted that to take off, and what happened was it didn't at all take off, and then she's just released her holiday special, her Christmas special, and really that's the swan song for the series. It's, you know, she's saying goodbye. It's not the launch of her new series for 2026, and I think that will be really disappointing for her because it just wasn't authentic. You know, it wasn't in her house. Harry was barely in it. It didn't show us really the real her. And so I think in 2026 she'll be having a great big rethink and trying yet again to find a new way to make money and a new kind of image to portray to the world.
Exactly. I mean, she's a shapeshifter, that's for damn sure. I should congratulate you on one of the great scoops of this year when you revealed in the Mail on Sunday this kind of initial peace talks between Meghan and Harry's PRs, who came over allegedly secretly to London to meet up with some of King Charles's people, and you got the scoop. You got a picture of them chatting away at a private members club. Those attempts to heal the rift, which you so brilliantly revealed, haven't come off, have they?
Well, they made a bit of progress, because then, of course, after that meeting at the In-N-Out Club, they did actually meet up. You know, we had those pictures of Harry going to Claret's house and meeting.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And then they have stayed in touch over Teams meetings, I heard. They don't use Zoom, strangely. And they do apparently call every couple of weeks. I do think there will be a Christmas call tomorrow. But it is slow progress, I agree. Yeah. I think Harry, well, I know Harry's going to come over in the new year, and I think he will see his father again. But his father is rightly being very cautious. So he does want to reunite with his son, and they are making headway, but the meetings are very controlled, short, you know, basically sort of listened into to make sure that none of this comes out in an open interview. So it's a trust-building exercise for Harry, and that means that's why really it's slow progress, because, you know, Harry has proven himself to be very untrustworthy recently.
Indeed. Well, it's been a hell of a royal year, and no doubt next year will be a hell of a royal year as well. Charlotte, congratulations again on one of the scoops of the year, and great to talk to you. Thank you so much. Charlotte.
So let me get this straight. The British media can sit on television discussing allegations surrounding Prince Andrew, his links to Jeffrey Epstein, accusations of inappropriate behavior, FBI investigations, questions about cooperation with authorities, alleged party weekends, and all sorts of deeply disturbing stories. But somehow, the people they still reserve the most venom for are Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. That is what fascinates me. Because if you actually listen carefully to these conversations, the contrast is unbelievable. Look at how Andrew gets discussed. Even when people are criticizing him, there is still this undertone of protection. There is still caution. There is still hesitation. There is still concern for his comfort, his reputation, his future exile destination, whether he will cooperate on Zoom, whether the pressure might become overwhelming for him emotionally. Meanwhile, Meghan gets called a shapeshifter. Harry gets called untrustworthy. And these are the people who stepped away from royal duties, built independent lives, raised their children privately, and have never been accused of criminal wrongdoing. The imbalance is staggering. And honestly, it tells you everything you need to know about the media ecosystem surrounding the monarchy. Because think about what was actually being discussed in that interview. They were openly talking about allegations connected to Andrew and Epstein. They were discussing FBI pressure. They were discussing the possibility of false statements. They were discussing behavior so reckless that even royal staff allegedly had to clean up after it. Yet somehow the energy suddenly shifted to Meghan's Netflix projects and RTL staffing changes, as though those things belong in the same moral universe. That is insane when you really think about it. And this is what frustrates so many people globally about the coverage of Meghan in particular. There is this obsessive need to frame her as manipulative, fake, controlling, difficult, calculating, or failing no matter what she does. If she launches projects, they say she's desperate. If she hires staff, they scrutinize the staff. If staff leave, they call it toxic. If she stays quiet, they say she's plotting. If she speaks, they say she wants attention. It is a no-win game designed specifically for Meghan. And the irony is that the same commentators constantly accuse Meghan of controlling the narrative, while spending hours every week trying to control the narrative themselves. Because let's be honest here, staff turnover happens everywhere, especially in media, entertainment, non-profit, and startup environments where teams evolve constantly depending on projects, funding cycles, contracts, and restructuring. But when it comes to Harry and Meghan, every staffing change becomes breaking news. Why? Because there is an industry financially dependent on portraying the Sussexes as collapsing. And every single year, we hear the same predictions. This will be Meghan's downfall. This is the year the marriage cracks. This is the year Hollywood rejects them. This is the year Netflix abandons them. This is the year Harry comes crawling back. And yet somehow, year after year, Harry and Meghan are still standing. Still married. Still globally recognized. Still financially independent. Still attracting attention without even trying. And that last part is important because even people who claim to hate Meghan cannot stop talking about her. Notice how quickly the conversation pivoted from Andrew to Meghan. That was not accidental. Because Meghan drives engagement. Meghan generates headlines. Meghan fuels outrage culture in Britain in a way few public figures ever have. And I think part of that comes from the fact that Meghan represents something many people within the traditional establishment still cannot fully process. She left, and she thrived anyway. That was never supposed to happen. The expectation was that Harry and Meghan would fail quickly outside the institution and come back humbled, apologetic, and dependent. Instead, they built their own platform. They signed deals. Harry released Spare, which became a massive global bestseller. They created documentaries. They launched initiatives through RTL. Meghan returned to lifestyle and media projects on her own terms. And despite endless attacks, people are still deeply interested in them. Now, does that mean every project will be universally loved? Of course not. No public figure succeeds 100% of the time. But the way Meghan's projects are covered versus how other royals' failures are covered is completely different. When Meghan's series does not dominate the cultural conversation for 5 straight months, the media acts like it is a catastrophic humiliation. Meanwhile, there are senior royals attached to scandals, controversies, and deeply troubling associations who still receive softer treatment than Meghan making jam or producing a lifestyle show. That disparity is impossible not to notice. And another thing that stood out to me in that interview was the constant suggestion that Harry is the untrustworthy one. Really? Harry told his story publicly because, for years, palace sources and tabloids told stories about him non-stop behind the scenes. People leaked against him repeatedly. He spoke openly about that. And now suddenly transparency itself is treated as betrayal. But what about all the anonymous briefings? What about the constant leaking from palace insiders to the press? What about the endless stories planted for years? Because it seems like some people believe only the institution has the right to tell the story. Harry telling his own story disrupted that control. And honestly, I think that is unforgivable in the eyes of certain royal commentators. But the reality is this. Harry and Meghan are not going away. No matter how many times people predict failure. No matter how many television panels mock them. No matter how many articles dissect staffing changes, body language, phone calls, Christmas invitations, or Netflix ratings. The Sussexes have built a life that exists beyond the approval of the British tabloids. And I think that is the real source of the anger. Because the monarchy and the press historically relied on controlling royal narratives tightly. Harry and Meghan stepped outside that system and proved that global relevance does not begin and end with palace approval. And once people realize that, it changes everything. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Why do you think the media treats Harry and Meghan more harshly over staffing changes and documentaries than royals connected to genuinely serious scandals?